Welcome back to the Elestriad Season 3. Today, I am DistantCoder, and I will be the voice in your head commentating this fantastic clash between none other than SunseedJess and GoldenNova. SunseedJess, obviously a fantastic Yu-Gi-Oh player, has attended Worlds, is now finding her debut in Elestrals, and is having her very first Elestrals tournament run in this Elestriad, and is going very well, freshly off of a win. She'll be taking on GoldenNova today, who is also a newcomer to the Elestriad. Both of these casters basically here to prove that they have what it takes to take it all the way. So Jess, tell us what deck you're going to be running against the one and only GoldenNova.
Week 2 or top 16 of the Elestriad, and we are playing against Water. So, I'm playing Wasp Ivy this week. The reason I'm playing Wasp Ivy? Quite simply, Wasp Ivy seems to have a really good matchup, but I do have to be careful because another Earth caster is bringing Wasp Ivy against another Water player this week. So I have to be a little bit careful that Wasp Ivy doesn't get prepared for, but I have my plans. I have my counterplay. So, we're playing Wasp Ivy. We're still playing Earth Nexus, so we still got all our Earth Nexus cards. We just got a bit of an Wasp Ivy package on top. So we've got 3 Wasp Ivy, 3 Cyanectar. This is our just basic Wasp Ivy package. Then 3 Poison Tipped Arrow, and 2 Poisoned Tunic. So, Poisoned Tunic, I'm not playing Argo because I found Argo very restrictive against the counterplay. So, one thing I'm slightly afraid of is my opponent playing Cryoblast in preparation for Wasp Ivy because it has a good matchup against Water. So, Argo is a little bit worse because if they go activate Cryoblast, destroy my Wasp Ivy or my Cyanectar, the Argo's kind of just sitting there doing nothing, so I'm just opting to only play these 5 copies. So that's it for my Cyanectar package. We're then playing our more standard Earth Nexus cards, 3 copies of Viscerus, 3 copies of Equilynx, and 2 copies of Mudlet. I liked 2 copies of Mudlet last week, so I'm sticking with it. Equilynx, Viscerus, same good cards as normal. And then for my non-Earths, I'm playing 3 copies of Astrabbit and 3 copies of Electric. Again, I don't think too much explanation is needed here. This adds Demeter. This adds whatever I'm missing in my hand. So, for our non-Elestrals, we have 2 copies of Demeter and 2 copies of Floy Forest. So, in some Wasp Ivy lists, they don't play Floy, but I have a special reason to. If I activate Floy Forest while I have a Wasp Ivy on field, then the Wasp Ivy becomes 3 defense. Specifically, 3 defense means they can't Cryoblast to destroy my Wasp Ivy, which is one counter that I'm thinking they might play. So, Floy Forest, as well as being a Nexus bank for my Equilynx to destroy spells and traps, it also allows me to play around Cryoblast much, much better. Then, for the rest of my runes, I'm playing 3 Ambrosia, 2 copies of Nectar of the Gods. I'm playing Nectar in Earth Nexus just because I'm playing Cyanectar. I'm going to side this out game 2 most likely, but I just want to dig for my Cyanectar and my Wasp Ivy package as early as I can, basically. But I don't want to play 3 and then potentially go too low. Then 1 copy of Earthquake, 1 copy of Resting on Your Laurels for the rest of the Invoke runes. Then I'm playing 3 copies of Gorgon's Gaze and 2 Altar of Stars. I can't play Tsunami this week. It's Water, doesn't really do anything to them, and I'm not a big fan of Shield of Achilles potentially bouncing Eddies or just utility cards in this matchup, so I'm quite happy with just my 3 Poison Tipped Arrow, 2 Altar of Stars, and 3 Gorgon's Gaze. Altar of Stars I'm only playing 2 of because it plays worse into Rock and a Hard Place. So, for my Spirit deck, I am playing 5, 10, 12 Earth Elestrals, 5 Earth Spirits, 5 Zapdos, 2 Leviathan, I'm not playing Tsunami, but Misenchanting is very, very valuable in this matchup. And 1 Owloon. So the main reason I'm playing Owloon is because of my side deck, but the reason I'm siding, I've got the Owloon instead of my Spirit deck, is because sending this for a Nectar of the Gods may make, or something like that, or when I take damage, will make my opponent be scared of me potentially maining or playing Gloombat. So I have to play it for Dense Fog inside, but I'm going to use it as a bit of a mind game. And then for the rest of my side deck, I'm playing 2 copies of Arcolith, so for my actual side deck, sorry, 2 copies of Arcolith, 2 copies of Boombat, 2 copies of Moss Station, and 2 copies of Verdolith. So I'm playing these 8 Elestrals. The reason I'm playing these 8 Elestrals is because I can side out my Cyanectar Wasp Ivy package whenever I want. So after game 1, if I think my opponent's going to be on more Cryoblast kind of stuffs, or I just think they have too many counters, I can very safely side out those packages and just side into more standard Earth Nexus. Verdolith is for heal builds, because Water can play Sluggle, it can play Dratuga. And then on top of that, I'm playing 3 copies of Dense Fog, 1 copy of Owloon, and then 2 Cryoblasts of my own, and a Flurmine. Flurmine is just for the Cryoblasts. Cryoblast is really good against Kurobis, against Eddy, and Dense Fog is just really good against potential Chronodile builds to stop the things like Galaxia, or to stop their Nexus spam versions. But yeah, that's it for my deck list for this week. Let's go on to the match.
So Jess's deck is genuinely kind of interesting. However, I don't know if I fully agree with the idea of bringing the Wasp Ivy. Yes, it's good against a Draking because Draking doesn't beat over it, but she's gonna have to be very mindful of the Kurobis. That card does have more attack points than the Wasp Ivy does, as well as the ability that Eddy has to turn the Wasp Ivy to defense and beat over it. So although the deck, yes, is good against water, Jess is gonna have to be extremely careful with the tools that GoldenNova has at his disposal. I really like the inclusion of the Arcolith in Jess's side. This card is going to be very powerful if GoldenNova is not ready for it. If he ends up playing into it and getting blown out, that is a very real possibility that we might see. But now that we've looked at what the Earthcaster is bringing, GoldenNova, show us how you plan to turn the tides.
Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and I'm back for round 2 of the Elestriad, Season 3. This time around, I'm going head-to-head against SunseedJess, wielder of the divine Demeter. It's going to be a tough matchup, but I'm going to do my best to make our way over to round 3. Let's take a look at Tidal Forces version 2. Because the list has a number of similarities from the last one, we're going to skip over a lot of the things that were in the last one. For instance, Triple Eddy, because it's really good. We also have the Kurobis that we are looking to special ascend from it by using Rock in a Hard Place. Double Aphros for the draw power and the Nexusing, double Dratagua for the healing so we can pay back all of the expensive stuff we want to do. Running in Foamy, I feel like there's a better chance to use this than last time around. If this gets destroyed in battle, we can get any of our other 1-cost Elestrals into play in defense position, and I was feeling that since we were running so few Elestrals in this list, Foamy's going to fit in just nicely to toolbox any of the other ones that we require. We have our double Drakid into our Draking, the triple Astrabbits for great card selection, 1 Chronodile. We've gone down on this one because I don't want to brick on it. Like I said, we're trying to make room for other stuff, namely this Foamy and some other things we'll be talking about in just a bit. So I want to make sure we don't draw into this too early, and we don't draw multiples of this. Hopefully we can use our card selection and card draw to get to this right when we need it. Speaking of card draw, Triple Nog. I don't want to play any less than this. Like I said previously, we've got healers like Dratagua. We can pay back what we invest in here so we can get to the combo cards that we need sooner than our opponent, which is going to help keep us ahead of the game. And Ambrosia is going to help with that, helps us heal some spirits. Rock in a Hard Place, very fun removal, combos very well with Drakid and Eddy. We have Resting on Your Laurels, the huge omission from last list. Can't believe I wasn't playing this. It may be at 1, and it may have some conditions on it, but it's otherwise 1-cost removal. This was, I can't believe I made it through without it. For our counter runes, triple PTA, one of the best ones. Double Tsunami, we've cut down on one, once again a concession, not only to making room for other things, but also because runes are a lot worse against an opponent who can consistently remove them, essentially for free. We have the double Gorgon's Gaze. We have moved Argo to the main deck. This is one of the main reasons we wanted to shift around our numbers here. I know that Mudlet and Altar of Stars is going to play a huge role in deciding combat in this matchup, so I wanted a way to get some artifact runes into rotation at a moment's notice so that we can turn the tables on our opponent. For that reason, we still have the Trident of Poseidon that we were playing last time, but we've also moved a Necklace of Harmonia. I've opted not to run Poison Tunic this time, largely because I worry about interactions with, if SunseedJess is for some reason on the Wasp Ivy line, I don't want to give her a free way to special ascend, so we're not Poison Tunicking. And double Poseidon here. Once again, we have cut down more on our Divine. It's a rough call to make considering how much we love having water spirits on our board, but like we mentioned last time, it's the Divine that does the least immediately, so when it comes to cuts, it's kind of the one we have to work with. For the side deck, we have Familiar Faces, triple Specteris, triple Dense Fog. We still have 4 Lunar Spirits in our Spirit deck to work with, so if we need to sub out things to get more effect negation, we can bring those in. We have the 3rd Argo in here in case our thoughts on how Argo is going to work is correct, in which case we can double down on it. We have the 2nd Trident of Poseidon in the side to help gain access to that, as well as the Necklace of Harmonia to make Argos as plentiful and as much of a blowout as possible. And then we have a bunch of one-of counter runes. The 3rd Gorgon's Gaze, the 3rd Tsunami, the double Shield of Achilles. This is just in case our Argo math is wrong, and then we can sub in more counter runes if those are actually safer than I'm giving them credit for. We're also keeping in the 1 Atlantis in here. This is a leftover from the 3 we were playing earlier. I didn't have a 15th card to sub this out for, so just in case we need another card to be a Spirit Bank, or if we just need the extra boost, we have the Atlantis in here, and the 3rd Poseidon in case we do require the extra spirits. And like I said, our Spirit deck is basically the same as last time. This is a chunk of 12 Leviathans. We've got 4 Owl Loons to handle all of our lunar needs, 3 Zaptors for all of our Astrabbit enchanting, and the 1 Luminape in case we're in a position where we can make Chronodial. I'm not gonna lie. I feel a lot less confident about this side deck than last time, and I guess I feel a lot less confident in this matchup than last time. But I've been doing my reps, I've been trying my best to theory craft, now it's time to put that into practice. Get on board the ship, everyone, because it's time to ship out to the battlefield. I'll see you in the games.
As expected, GoldenNova bringing this Curibus Draking strategy. Personally, I think that GoldenNova could have even potentially expected the Wasp Ivy from Jess's side and gone on a heavier Curibus focused build, as Curibus does beat the Wasp Ivy almost every single time. However, I really like the inclusion of the Chronodial. This card is absolutely able to steal some games if the opponent isn't able to deal with it, but Nova is going to have to be super careful about Equilinx, because Equilinx is able to clear the Poseidon, making it so that your Chronodial is then completely vulnerable. Now that we've seen the decks that these two casters have chosen to run, it is time to see how well they pilot their individual strategies. With that being said, let's get right into the clash. So both casters ready to throw down, and it looks like GoldenNova is going to be electing to mulligan, expending 2 spirits from their spirit deck in order to be able to shuffle away their hand and draw a brand new one. Now, mulliganing in this game has proven to be pretty powerful and can fix some really bad hands and give a player a better chance at, being able to play the game despite the fact that they're starting off with a little bit of a disadvantage. GoldenNova going to be paying 2 more spirits here in order to gain on some card advantage here. Mulliganing obviously doesn't give you any extra cards, it gives you the same number you normally would have had, whereas the Nectar of the Gods gives you a +1, making it so that you do have some amount of advantage on the opponent, and this Astrabbit going to be serving that exact same purpose, looking at the top 3 cards of the deck and adding one of those to the hand, making it so that GoldenNova has successfully gone +2 in card advantage in this turn, and although that he's down 15 spirits to 20, this is still going to be completely fine, because with the amount of cards that he has at his disposal, he'll probably be able to stop Jess right in her tracks. However, Jess also going to lead with a Nectar of the Gods herself, expending that lunar Lunar Spirit early because, you know, she knows that she doesn't have any lunar cards in her deck, able to expend that early. And here we have the Psy-Nectar. And Psy-Nectar, really powerful if she starts off with exactly this, the Poison Tunic. Now, the Psy-Nectar is considered to be a not-so-consistent strategy because you don't always see Psy-Nectar in combination with the Poison Tunic. But hey, if you see both of them at the same time, I would argue this is one of the more powerful combos Elestrals has to offer. So here the Psy-Nectar going to be able to trigger off of the activation of the Poisoned Tunic in order to ascend itself into a Wasp Ivy that is unaffected by all counter runes. So both of those counter runes, or, you know, supposedly counter runes that GoldenNova will have in his back row, are more than likely not going to be effective at all against this Wasp Ivy. GoldenNova looking at the back row, realizing, yep, this ain't going to work. We're going to have to figure out a different plan, and the Wasp Ivy will beat over the Astrabbit, and the Poison Tunic will cause GoldenNova to be forced to expend 2 spirits. Now, the Wasp Ivy is going to be a very scary card here, specifically because if GoldenNova does find a way to walk over it, he is going to have to expend 3. Wasp Ivy, a really, really difficult card to deal with, especially when you haven't tailored your deck very specifically to beat it. Here, Nova casts out a Foamy, basically going to be playing on the defense. However, Foamy does get an out for this Wasp Ivy, and Jess is going to have to be extra careful. She casts out an Equilynx, most likely going to go after some of that back row, but I don't know if she has a response to deal with this Foamy, and if she doesn't have a response for the Foamy, the problem here is that the Foamy will be able to cast out an Eddy, which can in turn turn the Wasp Ivy to defense, and Wasp Ivy has a very, very small defensive stat, meaning that the Eddy would be able to beat over it. Here, Jess is going to Equilynx to most likely Nexus off of the Demeter onto the Equilynx itself. Interesting choice in order to destroy one of Nova's back row, most likely going after anything that could prevent this Equilynx from attacking into this Foamy, or potentially even making it so that she might be going for a different line where she goes Wasp Ivy over the Foamy, and then the Foamy has to summon an Eddy, and then you go Equilynx over. But I guess she's deciding that she doesn't really care if the Eddy turns this Wasp Ivy to defense. With 2 back row, she's most likely feeling pretty good, and most likely not too worried about this Eddy. As long as she has anything like PTA Gorgon's Gaze Shield, she'd be able to make it so that this Eddy is not able to clear this Wasp Ivy. So here, Eddy most likely going to be triggering, and with the Wasp Ivy, with the Eddy, the GoldenNova will be able to turn the Wasp Ivy to defense. But here, Gorgon's Gaze is going to be activated on Jess's side, paying 2 spirits in order to negate the effect of that Eddy, and effectively solidifying Jess in a commanding position here. I really don't know how exactly Jess could possibly lose in a position like this. Eddy being the only realistic out for the Wasp Ivy. So now GoldenNova is probably going to have to fish for something like Eddy plus Rock in a Hard Place, which, you know, maybe the Nectar of the Gods can get him there. But if he gets Eddy plus Rock in a Hard Place, there is a very real world where he's able to turn this Wasp Ivy to defense, Rock in a Hard Place to clear the other back row or the Equilynx, which is definitely putting Jess in a Rock in a Hard Place. This is an Eddy. We have the first step of the combo. If we see a Rock in a Hard Place, we are potentially able to put Jess in an uncomfortable position. Here's hoping for GoldenNova that Jess does not have a back row that is able to stop this play. Do we not activate this Eddy? Oh, are we... GoldenNova chooses to pass, not choosing to activate the effect of Eddy to turn Wasp Ivy to defense. I'm very confused. I'm not going to lie. That feels like the very intuitive play, unless I'm missing something. Jess is going to use the Equilynx effect and Nexus onto itself, destroying a back row, and there goes the Argo. Potentially that was GoldenNova's plan, hoping that the Equilynx would swing and then be able to use the Argo to potentially equip Trident of Poseidon to make it so that the Equilynx would destroy itself. But here, Foley 4 is going to buff up the Equilynx to a 6 attack and the Wasp Ivy to a 10, and a Viscerus coming down. Oh my goodness, this game is getting out of hand very, very quickly for GoldenNova. This Wasp Ivy is now also too big for a potential Kuribus to walk over it too, making it so that GoldenNova's outs are starting to look very, very, not so present in this game state. Viscerus going to trigger to be able to summon another copy of itself, and Jess is going to pass on basically an entire board after swinging for 4 more additional damage. Unless GoldenNova's back row is potentially able to stop any of that, but I can't think of a specific back row that would be able to do that and put GoldenNova into a good position. And this game is very quickly getting out of hand, and Jess has taken the upper hand very quickly. GoldenNova expending that Solar Spirit basically removing the possibility of dropping a Chronodial, although I'll be honest, with how the board is looking, I don't think a Chronodial was in the cards for this game, I'm not gonna lie. GoldenNova draws for turn, 4 spirits to 7, but Jess also has like 10 spirits on board or something like that, and it appears GoldenNova is going to scoop it up and say, you know what, I'm going to try to go into my side deck and find a better out for this Wasp-Ivy card, because my main deck is not well suited to beat this thing. Going into game 2, both casters draw their hands of 5 cards. Will any of them choose to mulligan? It doesn't look like they do, and GoldenNova starts us off with an Elestriad, looking like last game, but without the mulligan, GoldenNova is probably feeling better on spirits. Looking at the top 3 cards of his deck, not going to have to show any of them to his opponent, and here going to be able to basically +1 off of this card, digging for potential counter runes that would be able to stop it. If GoldenNova is able to find a Gorgon's Gaze to be able to stop the Nectar, that would probably put him in a very good position early on. And here we're going to be seeing one singular back row being set, and then a big old pass over to Jess. Jess draws for turn, hoping to get her combo off of the Nectar plus the Poison Tunic. Looks like she's starting with a set back row. And there's the Nectar. Do we see Nectar, Poison Tunic in the opening hand 2 games in a row? If she does, that would be really powerful. But there's also the possibility that that face down rune is a poison-tipped arrow, and here she can just essentially pass. Basically putting GoldenNova on, are you going to turn this rabbit to attack, or are you going to cast something? And here GoldenNova, very risky, casting out the Foamy, and if this back row is the poison-tipped arrow, that means this Nectar turns into a Wasp-Ivy, and there it is. The poison-tipped arrow going to put the Foamy down to 0. Foamy will still be able to crash in order to get its effect off if GoldenNova does decide that he wants to take a little bit of damage here. However, I don't know that that's really going to solve very many problems. I guess there is a way that GoldenNova can out this Wasp-Ivy right now, actually, because you can crash this Foamy into the Wasp-Ivy, take some damage, turn it to defense with an Eddy, and then use the Astrabbit's 2 attack to walk over the 1 defense Wasp-Ivy. The only issue here is you're taking 1 damage off of this Foamy crashing into the Wasp-Ivy, and then after you've cast out your Eddy and turned the Wasp-Ivy to defense and swing over with the rabbit, then GoldenNova is going to be taking 3 more points of damage. And it looks like GoldenNova has spotted the line that does let him get to and out to this Wasp-Ivy. And honestly, I think outing the Wasp-Ivy at whatever cost potentially would be coming towards him is probably a good position for GoldenNova to be put in. So here the Eddy comes down in defense position, obviously, because that's the only position that the Foamy can cast in. And here Eddy's effect will turn the Wasp-Ivy to defense, and then the Astrabbit will attack over it, clearing the Wasp-Ivy, putting Jess on 0 cards on the field. However, GoldenNova going to be taking 3 more points of damage here, dropping him down to 13 spirits to Jess's 17. So it's a pretty substantial differential in spirits, but not necessarily game-ending for GoldenNova. So Nova does have some very real potential to be coming out on top in this clash, depending on what Jess has in her hand. So here, Jess definitely looking for potentially an Equilings Demeter play, and there we see a Viserys, a very, very powerful card, does threaten the board and potentially putting Jess back into having a lot of Elestrals on the field, depending on if GoldenNova's back row is real or not. If that's a Tsunami, it probably puts Jess in a pretty rough position, and it is a Tsunami. Very, very powerful counter rune here. Puts the rabbit back into a defensive position, turning the Viserys to defense. Now, the only issue is that GoldenNova probably needs a second Elestral that can walk over this Viserys, and there we have a Drakid, which is definitely able to do just that. Drakid able to use its effect to target the Viserys in order to make the Viserys' attack 2 and the Drakid's effect attack 4, making it so that Drakid and Eddy are both able to attack over. Now, if GoldenNova has a rock in a hard place, there's a potential that we see Draking and Kuribis coming onto the field here. Does GoldenNova even have any back row at all? It doesn't look like it. I think we are in the battle phase, and GoldenNova going to attack over this Viserys. It will get cleared, so that means Jess's back row is either a bluff or she's choosing to keep it for a more opportune time, which I can definitely see her doing. Here the Drakid will attack directly for 1 point of damage, and with no defenses other than a big booty rabbit, GoldenNova is going to pass. Jess casts out the Elechick, going to be able to get that Demeter and allow her to walk over any Elestral on GoldenNova's board. So she can basically decide which of these Elestrals she views as the biggest threat and get rid of it. Here, most likely attacking over the Drakid, because the Drakid does pose a pretty substantial threat, because should GoldenNova draw into the Rock and Hard Place, that Drakid as well as this Eddy could both ascend into their ascended forms of Charybdis and Draking, respectfully. And here an Eddy comes down on GoldenNova's side, turning the Elechick to defense, making it so every Elestral on GoldenNova's side of the board is able to walk over the Elechick. They really are just playing a big old game of ping pong, passing back and forth, allowing each other to remove one Elestral from each side of the board individually, one at a time. Now here, I think if you're GoldenNova, if you have a defensive card, you turn your Ass Rabbit to attack, set a back row, and start swinging for some damage, but I don't know that this is the best play if GoldenNova doesn't have any back row at his disposal, and it doesn't seem that he does. I think I would much more value the Ass Rabbit being in defense to keep it basically as a big wall that Jess most likely can't get over without being forced to use her Demeter. Because what you got to keep in mind is that we know that Jess has a Demeter in her hand, therefore GoldenNova is going to have to start whittling down the spirits that Jess is going to put underneath that Demeter in order to start beating Jess's Elestrals. Here, Jess is going to expend to draw and activate a Cryoblast to destroy an Eddy, kind of putting herself on the back foot just a little bit. Both players on 10 spirits, so we have closed the gap from that big old Waspivy burn from earlier in the clash. GoldenNova going to activate Nectar of the Gods to draw 2 more cards from his deck to his hand, and at this point, most likely, I believe, going to have a pretty substantial advantage on cards. I'm not exactly sure how many cards Jess has in her hand, but GoldenNova going to cast out a Dratagua and heal up the 2 spirits, refunding that Nectar of the Gods that he activated, making it so that he's back into a comfortable spirit differential with Jess. Putting the Dratagua in defense but leaving the Ass Rabbit in attack is so interesting to me. And there we go, GoldenNova basically hearing me through the commentary, turns the Ass Rabbit to defense with a back row, and here going to be using the Eddy in order to attack directly. GoldenNova understanding that with a Demeter in Jess's hand, after an expend to draw, most likely she will have a good Elestral to cast out, and in this position, GoldenNova is going to have to try his best to make it so that Jess is forced to use those Demeter spirits in order to beat over GoldenNova's Elestrals. Here we see a misenchanted Earth Elechick potentially telegraphing a Foley Forest, that's what I was going to say, making it so that this Elechick is able to beat over this Eddy without having to use the Demeter. Basically, Jess holding on to her resources as long as she possibly can so that she's not forced to basically commit a ton of spirits to the field. Very, very good idea on her side, very, very strong play, but GoldenNova turning this Ass Rabbit to defense was pretty smart because there's a potential that Elechick might have wanted to go after the Ass Rabbit. And here we see another Eddy, yet another Edward, coming down onto the field, potentially turning that Elechick to defense. However, if Jess has anything to stop this, that Elechick won't be able to be walked over by any of GoldenNova's Elestrals, and there we see a Gorgon's Gaze, exactly the card that she needed. Thankfully for her, she did have the one card that stopped the Eddy play, because without it, that Elechick was going down, and Jess was most likely going to be taking a lot of spirit damage. Here, she's on 5 spirits left, meaning that she doesn't have a whole lot of spirits left at her disposal, so she's probably fiending for an Ambrosia here. And here we see, is this an Ascension? We are ascending the Elechick into a Earth Water Waspivy. Now, keep in mind, this Waspivy is not unaffected by counter runes. If GoldenNova has a Shield of Achilles, this could probably spell the end of the game for Jess. Jess going to use the Waspivy to attack over the Eddy, dealing 1 point of damage to GoldenNova, and basically putting GoldenNova on, do you have an out, buddy? If you don't have an out, there's no chance that you're winning this game, because this Waspivy is friggin' massive. So GoldenNova here going to have to try and dig to find some sort of out. Poseidon, a decent card, going to be able to re-enchant this Dratagua, letting GoldenNova live a little bit longer. There is a world that GoldenNova can just decide to play the heal stall game at this point and try to heal up as many spirits as possible, making it so that Jess's low spirit count puts her in a position where if she starts playing more cards, she's just basically going to be whittling down her own resources as she plays, while GoldenNova can constantly recycle those spirits back and keep himself alive in this game. Here we see a Nectar of the Gods. Realistically, should probably be pulling off of this Dratagua or this Poseidon, but we're going to be using spirits from our spirit deck that we just refunded with the Dratagua, most likely trying to draw into a potential Curibus. Do we see it? And we got the Curibus coming down. Curibus could win the game right here, right now, unless Jess's set card is exactly Gorgon's Gaze. What are the odds that she would potentially draw the second Gorgon's Gaze? Because that feels like the only card that wins her the game here. Because if GoldenNova activates this Curibus, detaching 2 spirits, destroying that Waspivy, that puts Jess in a position where she is staring down basically enough damage on the field to put her to 0. So she really needs this set rune to be a Gorgon's Gaze to be able to stop this. Otherwise, I think the game is going to be ending for Jess. Let's see. GoldenNova activates the Curibus, attempting to destroy a card. Curibus does not target, so if Jess is going to respond, she has to respond now, not knowing what card GoldenNova is going after. And down goes the Waspivy. GoldenNova going to be able to heal back 2 water spirits as well, putting himself back up to 5 spirits in his spirit deck to Jess's 4, and presenting 3 points of damage here. I think there was a very real world GoldenNova should have potentially detached from both Poseidons, and here we have the Trident of Poseidon, basically telling Jess, hey, if you got a counter rune, you gotta activate it now, because otherwise you are not allowed to activate it because I control Poseidon. And I assume this is the reason why GoldenNova left the Poseidon up on his field, basically making it so that Jess cannot activate any of her counter runes to mitigate any counterplay that she might potentially have. This big old Curibus with 9 attack is about to swing face and put Jess down to 1 singular spirit as she draws for turn. Basically, gonna have to dig for something that's able to out this Curibus. Ambrosia, a decent start, which you gotta keep in mind, Curibus does have 2 defense, and we saw earlier in the clash that Jess was playing Cryoblast, and Cryoblast is able to clear this Curibus. And this Mudlet is also able to get rid of it. Hold on a second. This Mudlet does not target, turns the Curibus to defense, and Curibus will have 2 defense here. This Mudlet on 4, and we see a Gorgon's Gaze, and this should spell the end of the game for Jess. She's not allowed to activate that counter rune, whatever it may be. This Mudlet won't be able to walk over anything, and then on the crackback, Nova can just detach 2 spirits and destroy the Mudlet and attack for game. And that's going to be the end of game 2. Very, very well played. Clash on both sides, honestly. GoldenNova, very, very surprising. Holding on to that Dratagua, specifically to be able to ascend it into a Curibus, is such a heads-up play. I really, really like the way GoldenNova played out that game. Very, very strong. Going into Clash number 3, assuming that Jess is going to choose to go first here, is she going to choose to keep her hand, or is she going to mulligan? Looks like she's putting a spirit on the board. 2 spirits, going to mulligan away her hand, shuffling her hand away to draw a brand new hand of 5 cards, most likely not happy with what that initial hand looked like. And then we see an expend to draw after the mulligan. I don't hate this. I think expending to draw on the first turn, if you don't have a specifically really powerful normal cast like a Searcher or something like an Astrabbit that can +1 you in card advantage, there typically isn't any real reason to just slap a guy out. You might as well just expend to draw, get that card advantage, and play a more reactive game to the stuff your opponent is going to play, rather than try to stick some stuff to the board and let your opponent play the reactive game. Here, GoldenNova uses the Nectar of the Gods to draw 2 cards and expends to draw himself. And we're basically seeing both players kind of mirroring each other, setting 1 back row on GoldenNova's side of the board. And are we just going to see a pass? We're going to see a 2nd back row, maybe a 3rd, maybe a 4th. We're seeing 3 back row, set 4, full combo. Never mind, we only see 3. Jess going to draw for turn. And here, Jess is in a position that she can be very happy with. More often than not, against Earth, you only want to set 1 back row so that you can activate it when the Echo Lynx comes down, and here we're going to see Jess be able to punish. The Echo Lynx comes down into 3 back row, and then we see a Foliage Forest. Now, if GoldenNova has something like a Tsunami, or potentially a Poison-Tipped Arrow if he had it on the normal cast of the Echo Lynx, having multiple back row means that the Echo Lynx not only trades for a back row, but also gets to pop 1 with its effect as well, granting it the most amount of value you could possibly get off this Echo Lynx. Nexusing off of the Foliage Forest, we're going to be attempting to destroy the back row that is in that specific column, just being very, very clear, and there you see the Poison-Tipped Arrow. So this really put GoldenNova in a tough position. If Nova had just set the Poison Tipped Arrow, when the Echolinks came down, Nova could have just activated the Poison Tipped Arrow and made it so that there was no card for the Echolinks to destroy, and then here Nova would have still had 2 back row ready to go in his hand, and the Echolinks would have been removed from the field. Here we see the Eddy activating its effect to turn Echolinks to defense, but again, this loses to pretty much every counter rune in the game. Poison Tipped Arrow beats this, Gorgon's Gaze beats this, Shields beats this, and there you go. As I said, the Gorgon's Gaze is going to be able to activate onto the Eddy, making it so that the Eddy cannot turn the Echolinks to defense, nor will it be able to attack for the remainder of the turn, making it so that this Echolinks on Jess's board is more than likely going to be sticking around. And that's not where you want to be if you're playing against the Earth deck, especially when you have 2 back row set. Here, Jess able to run out the Viscerus, and then the same kind of situation is presented to GoldenNova. If Nova has a Poison Tipped Arrow, you kind of have to use it on it here, but then the Echolinks just clears the second back row that you have back there. Echolinks going to be able to use its effect, Nexusing to the Viserys and destroying a back row, and there you see a Dense Fog, which honestly, that might have been a smart card to activate, but no, GoldenNova choosing to hold that one Dense Fog and use this other one. That feels like a little bit of a waste of runes, allowing Jess, because basically what this does is it makes it so that the Viserys and the Eddy crash and both get destroyed, so GoldenNova takes 1 damage, but GoldenNova really let Jess get away with a lot of back row removal that she shouldn't have been able to get away with had he basically been a lot more conservative with the counter runes that he decided to set. So here, Jess gonna pass with a back row and Echolinks, and once again, Eddy coming down on GoldenNova's side, but this play loses to pretty much every possible counter rune. Jess is going to let it resolve. Echolinks goes to defense. Will we be seeing a rock and a hard place? We're going to target the Echolinks and target the face down rune here, and the face down rune cannot be chained. So basically telling Jess, do you want to keep the back row or do you want to keep the links? And she chooses to keep the links, which is a very interesting choice because you know this Eddy's just ascending into a Kerbis and will clear the Echolinks anyway. I think you might have preferred to keep the back row because then at that point, you know you're losing the Echolinks anyway. You might as well take the extra point of damage and keep your Altar of Stars, I think. But maybe Jess has other plans that I'm just not familiar with. And here we have the Poseidon coming down, meaning that the Kerbis will be able to destroy this Echolinks and heal up a Spirit, but there's also the possibility that GoldenNova is holding on to a Trident of Poseidon, which is kind of a good thing for him if he has the Trident of Poseidon, but it's also slightly problematic because we know that Jess is playing the Cryoblast, and if you commit really hard into a Kerbis with the Trident of Poseidon, you lose super hard to a Cryoblast. Here, GoldenNova going to heal a Spirit, and I would like to direct your attention to the current Spirit counts of both players. Jess is going down to 9 after this attack, but GoldenNova is sitting on 5. If Jess has a Cryoblast here, GoldenNova is basically put in a position where he's most likely going to be playing from behind. Jess going to expend to draw, most likely digging, and there it is, the Cryoblast that puts GoldenNova in the most awkward possible situation. You're down 2 spirits on your opponent, seemingly not very many cards in hand remaining, meaning that Jess can just kind of bide her time and wait for the opening to run out a big Elestral. Here we see Astrabbit coming down in attack, losing to a Poison-Tipped Arrow potentially. GoldenNova definitely should not be putting this in attack if he doesn't have any defensive cards, so I really hope to see some sets, and there you go, a set back row, basically telegraphing that he does have something defensive, but not something Jess can really play around unless she somehow draws into another Echolinks plus Demeter combo. So this Astrabbit in attack probably going to be sticking around for a little bit, and there we see a Viserys. Once again, this loses to every possible back row combination. If this is a Poison-Tipped Arrow, if this is a Gorgon's Gaze, you just turn your Astrabbit to defense, and then that Viserys doesn't threaten you anymore. However, GoldenNova's spirit count is looking really bad. 2 spirits to 5 without having a guy big enough to clear Jess's board really puts GoldenNova on the back foot. GoldenNova has to draw into something nice here, and Ambrosia would be good. Heck, even a Jotagua would probably feel pretty decent. Eddie, definitely a solid option. Again, loses to every back row in the game. I feel like a broken record at this point, but the back row really, really is powerful and defines the way a lot of these games end up playing out. Now, the thing is, this Astrabbit with 2 attack is not big enough to walk over the Viserys, so yes, smart for GoldenNova to turn that thing to defense, because otherwise, you know, the moment you lose all your guys when you have so few spirits is the moment you lose the game. GoldenNova has to hope and pray that this Eddie gets him through, and there it does. The Viserys goes down. Very, very good for GoldenNova. Puts himself in a position where he's leading 2 Elestrals to 0 and hoping that Jess doesn't have any outs, but this is a pretty freaking good out. Resting on your laurels gets to destroy one of GoldenNova's 2 Elestrals. Most likely going to go after the rabbit. Oh no, we're going after Eddie. I guess Jess has some other out for the rabbit. Is she potentially holding on to a Demeter that she can use to walk over it? Or just use Elechick, grab the Demeter yourself, and use it to walk over this Astrabbit. Putting GoldenNova on a singular spirit means that a lot of the back row that GoldenNova might have just won't do anything, and there you have it, the Ambrosia. This card late game really spells GoldenNova's demise. Once Ambrosia comes down for one player and not for the other in a late game scenario, it really puts one player so far behind, and it's really, really difficult to claw back a position like this. Jess going to cast out the Demeter using the effect in order to pump up the Elechick. We're using the Altar of Stars. Oh, Jess just wants to kill right now. She's like, I'm going to kill you right now. I'm going to turn your rabbit to attack, put a second spirit on my Elechick, attack over the Astrabbit, and deal 1 point of damage, putting GoldenNova on 0, making it so you can't activate any more cards. And with that, that will be the end of the clash. GoldenNova draws, not able to play any of his cards, and fist bumps Jess, being a very good sport about this game. Very, very well played clash from both players, I'll be honest. That was very, very impressive, very well played. Jess plays a very, very patient game, and then tries to spot the optimal time to make a very powerful push, and she did just that there. She's like, with 1 spirit left, I have to go all in. I'm just gonna send it and try to deal the damage to put him on 0, and she did, and with that, took the clash. Congratulations to Jess. Congratulations to her for moving on to the top 8 of the tournament. Very, very well played from GoldenNova. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the Elestrals channel so that you can watch these clashes as they go out every single day. With that being said, I will see you in the next one. Peace!